Chapter 7. Slavery. The engine of Viking society. Winter has fully set in now, and the longhouse is crowded with people trying to stay warm. But as you look around, you realize that nearly half the people in this space aren't free. They're thralls, slaves, and their lives are about to become your focus for understanding just how deeply slavery is woven into Viking society. The morning begins like any other. The thralls wake first. Before dawn, their sleeping spots the coldest areas of the longhouse, nearest the doors and furthest from the fire. While free people still sleep, the thralls begin their work. You watch as a thrall woman named Brigid, one of the nuns captured in your first raid, begins her day. It's been months since her capture, and she's changed. The defiance in her eyes has been replaced by something else. Not acceptance exactly, but resignation. She's learned that resistance brings only pain. She tends the fire first, coaxing it back to life from the embers, feeding it carefully controlled amounts of wood. Then she begins hauling water from the stream, a task that will require multiple trips. The water buckets are heavy, and her hands are cracked and bleeding from the cold and constant labor. No one thanks her, no one acknowledges her work. She's expected to be invisible, to perform her tasks without being noticed. Another thrall, a man named Cormac, who was captured from Ireland, is already outside tending to the livestock. In the pre-dawn darkness, in temperatures well below freezing, he's mucking out the barn, feeding the animals, checking for any that might have died during the night. He wears inadequate clothing for the cold. Thralls don't get the warm wool cloaks and furs that free people have. They make do with thin tunics and whatever scraps they can scavenge. You've learned that this is deliberate. Keeping thralls cold, hungry and exhausted is a control mechanism. People who are constantly struggling to survive don't have the energy to rebel. As the day progresses, you observe the full scope of thrall labor in the settlement. In the fields, even in winter, there's work. Thralls are clearing land, moving stones, building walls and fences. It's back-breaking labor that free people avoid whenever possible. In the longhouse, thralls do all the food preparation. They grind grain for hours on the hand mill, a task so repetitive and physically demanding that it deforms their bones over time. They butcher meat, they cook, they clean, they empty the waste pits, a job so disgusting that even mentioning it is considered vulgar. They haul all the water, they maintain the fires, they do the laundry, such as it is, pounding clothing in cold streams. They spin wool and weave cloth, producing the textiles that clothe everyone, though they themselves wear rags. They tan leather, working with urine and feces to soften the hides, their hands perpetually stained and reeking. Every unpleasant, dangerous or exhausting job falls to the thralls, and they're expected to do it all without complaint, without rest, without any hope of improvement. The ratio in your settlement is about 2 free people for every thrall. This is typical. The entire Viking economy depends on slave labor. Without thralls, the lifestyle of the free population would be impossible. Think about it. Raiding requires that men leave for months at a time. Who maintains the settlement while they're gone? Who does the agricultural work, the animal husbandry, the essential daily labor? Thralls. The system is so entrenched that no one questions it. It's just how things are. Some people are free, others are thralls. It's as natural as the sun rising. But the reality of the system is horrific. You witness a scene that encapsulates the brutality of Viking slavery. A thrall man named Eamon has dropped and broken a clay pot. It's not a valuable item, easily replaced. But Ragnhild, the Jarl's wife who manages the household, sees an opportunity to make an example. She orders him stripped and tied to a post in the center of the settlement. Then she has him whipped. 10 lashes with a leather strap, delivered with full force. Eamon doesn't scream. He's learned that showing pain only encourages more punishment. He just grits his teeth and endures. His back is a mass of welts and bleeding cuts when it's over. He's untied and sent back to work immediately. No treatment for his wounds. The free people watch with casual interest. Some children treat it as entertainment. No one objects or shows sympathy. This is normal. This is justice. A thrall failed in his duty and was punished. The system working as intended. Later that day, you're in the workshop area when you overhear a conversation between 2 free men discussing the value of their thralls. "That Irish woman I took last season, she's been good," one says. "Strong worker, hasn't tried to escape. I'm thinking of breeding her." "With who?" the other asks. "Haven't decided. Maybe that big thrall Torsten owns. Good bloodlines. Their offspring should be valuable. They're discussing human breeding like livestock. And to them, that's exactly what it is. Thralls aren't people. They're property, assets to be managed and exploited. The breeding of thralls is common practice. A female thrall who produces children increases her owner's wealth. The children are automatically thralls, the property of their mother's owner, regardless of who the father is. Sometimes male thralls are selected for their physical attributes and forced to breed with multiple female thralls. Sometimes free men impregnate thrall women, though the children are still thralls unless the father chooses to acknowledge and free them, which is rare. You learn about this firsthand when Bridget, the former nun, visibly becomes pregnant. She's been in the settlement for about 8 months, and it's obvious what happened. She was used by one or more of the free men. She doesn't speak about it. Thralls learn quickly that complaining about sexual abuse is pointless and dangerous. She just continues her work, her belly growing, her face a mask of suppressed emotion. When her child is born, it happens with minimal fuss. A thrall woman with midwife experience helps with the delivery in a cold corner of the longhouse. There are complications. Bridget hemorrhages badly. You watch as she bleeds, growing paler, her life visibly draining away. The midwife does what she can, but there's no real medical care for thralls. If they survive, good. If they die, their owner has lost an asset. But that's just the cost of doing business. Bridget dies 3 hours after giving birth. Her baby, a girl, survives. Her body is taken out and buried in an unmarked grave in unconsecrated ground. There's no ceremony, no prayers. She was a thrall. Her death is barely worth mentioning. The baby is given to another thrall woman who's still nursing to raise. The child will grow up as a thrall, never knowing her mother, never knowing any life but slavery. The man who fathered her, assuming he even knows or cares, doesn't acknowledge any responsibility. Why would he? It was his right to use his thrall as he wished. This is the fate of female thralls. Sexual exploitation is simply expected. Some owners use them themselves. Others allow other free men to use them, sometimes for a fee. Some are forced into prostitution, with their earnings going to their owners. And if they become pregnant, they're expected to keep working until the last possible moment, then return to work as soon as physically possible after giving birth. The infant mortality rate among thrall children is staggering. They're not valued the way free children are. They receive minimal care and inadequate food. Many don't survive their first year. Those who do survive grow up in slavery, learning from earliest childhood that they're inferior, that they exist only to serve, that their lives have no inherent value. You befriend, as much as that's possible across the free thrall divide, a young thrall woman named Aif. She was born into slavery, the daughter of an Irish thrall woman and an unknown father. She's never known freedom. She can't imagine it. When you try to talk to her about her hopes or dreams, she looks at you with confusion. Dreams, she says. Thralls don't dream. We work, we survive. That's all there is. But don't you want something more? Freedom, maybe? She laughs bitterly. Want doesn't matter. I'm a thrall. I'll always be a thrall. My children, if I'm allowed to have any that survive, will be thralls. That's how it is. The acceptance in her voice is chilling. She's been so thoroughly conditioned by the system that she can't even conceive of any other way of existing. This is what slavery does. It doesn't just oppress the body, it crushes the spirit, the imagination, the very ability to hope for something better. You learn about the different categories of thralls and how the system works. Some thralls are temporary. A free person who can't pay their debts might become a thrall for a fixed period, working off what they owe. This is rare but possible. These thralls retain some rights and have a path to freedom. Most thralls, though, are permanent. They're war captives, or the children of thralls, and they have no rights whatsoever. They can be bought, sold, traded, given as gifts, used as collateral for loans, or killed at their owner's whim. The price of a thrall varies based on age, sex, health, and skills. A young, healthy male thrall in his prime might cost 12 to 16 ounces of silver. A skilled craftsman thrall might cost more. A female thrall of childbearing age is valued for her reproductive capacity, as well as her labor. Children are cheaper, elderly thralls even cheaper still. Disabled or sick thralls are nearly worthless, and are often simply killed or abandoned rather than maintained. The slave trade is a major part of the Viking economy. Professional slave traders travel from settlement to settlement, buying and selling thralls. Major trading centres like Hedeby in Denmark or Dublin in Ireland have thriving slave markets where hundreds of captives change hands. Vikings also sell thralls to foreign markets. The Byzantine Empire, the Islamic Caliphates, all purchase slaves from Viking traders. Some of the thralls captured in Western Europe end up as far away as Baghdad or Constantinople, thousands of miles from their homes. The scale of this trade is staggering. Tens of thousands of people are enslaved by Vikings every year during the height of the Viking Age. Entire regions are depopulated by slave raids. You accompany the Jarl to a regional market and witness the slave trade firsthand. There's a section of the market dedicated to human commerce. Thralls are displayed like livestock, sometimes literally chained to posts. Buyers examine them, checking their teeth, feeling their muscles, assessing their value. "This one's got good teeth," a buyer says, prying open a young woman's mouth to examine her. "Bit thin though. You been feeding her?" "She eats plenty," the seller lies. "Just naturally slender. She's a hard worker though, strong as an ox." The haggling continues. Eventually a price is agreed upon. Silver changes hands. The woman is unchained from one post and chained to another, now the property of a new owner who will take her to a new settlement where she knows no one and has no allies. Her face shows no emotion. She's learned that showing fear or sadness only makes buyers think you're weak. You maintain a blank expression and hope for an owner who isn't too cruel. You see children being sold, separated from parents who are being sold to different buyers. The children cry. The parents are helpless to protect them. The buyers and sellers are unmoved. This is just business. You see an old man being sold for a pittance. He's probably going to be worked to death in a short time, his new owner wanting to extract what little value remains before he becomes a burden. You see a woman, heavily pregnant, being sold. The buyer is calculating whether she'll survive childbirth and whether the baby will be healthy enough to eventually become a productive worker. This is the reality of the Viking slave trade. People reduced to commodities, their value calculated in ounces of silver, their lives and families meaning nothing in the face of profit. Back at the settlement, you observe the psychological mechanisms that maintain the slave system. First, there's the constant threat of violence. Any thrall who disobeys, who shows insolence, who fails in their duties, faces immediate physical punishment. Beatings are routine. For more serious offenses, mutilation, cutting off an ear, a hand, blinding, branding, the most severe punishment is death. But that's relatively rare because it destroys the owner's property. More often, rebellious thralls are sold to owners known for their cruelty, a fate considered worse than death. Second, thralls are kept isolated and divided. They're not allowed to gather in groups. They're discouraged from forming relationships with each other. This prevents them from organizing or planning escapes or rebellions. Third, informants are cultivated. Some thralls, offered small privileges or slightly better treatment, spy on other thralls and report any signs of discontent or plans to rebel. This creates an atmosphere of distrust among the thralls themselves. Fourth, thralls are dehumanized through language and treatment. They're referred to as property, not people. They're assigned tasks that are deliberately demeaning. They're forced to use different entrances to buildings. They eat after everyone else and only get what's left. They're excluded from religious ceremonies and social gatherings. All of this is designed to break their spirit, to make them accept their status as natural and inevitable. But despite all this, some thralls do resist. Escapes are rare because where would you go? The landscape is unfamiliar. You don't speak the language well. You have no resources, no allies. The free population will turn you in for a reward, and if you're caught, the punishment is severe. Still, some try. You hear about a thrall who managed to steal a small boat and attempt to row back to England. He was caught within a day, brought back and had his feet cut off so he could never try again. Another thrall poisoned his owner's family, killing 2 children before he was discovered. He was burned alive in retaliation, a death that took hours. These stories are told and retold as warnings. This is what happens to thralls who resist. This is why you should accept your fate. More common than escape or rebellion is suicide. Thralls who can't endure their lives anymore find ways to end them. Drowning is popular because it's relatively accessible. Hanging, if you can find the opportunity. Some simply stop eating, wasting away despite beatings to force them to consume food. Suicide is seen as a waste by the owners, but not a tragedy. It's just a loss of property, like a sheep dying. The thrall's suffering is irrelevant. You witness one particularly heartbreaking case. A thrall couple, both captured from Scotland, managed to maintain their relationship despite the system's efforts to prevent it. The woman becomes pregnant. For a brief time they have hope. They'll have a child, a family, even if they're enslaved. But when the baby is born, it's immediately taken from the mother and given to a different thrall woman to nurse. The biological parents are not allowed to raise their own child. The owner doesn't want thralls forming strong family bonds that might make them more resistant to control. The mother breaks. She's inconsolable. Within a week she walks into the fjord and doesn't come back. Her body washes up 2 days later. The father is beaten for not preventing her suicide, as if he had any control over it. He's sold to a different owner shortly after, separated from the child he'll now never know. This is what slavery does to families, to love, to the most basic human bonds. As winter deepens and you spend more time in the close confines of the longhouse, you're forced to confront your own complicity in this system. You're not a thrall owner yourself, but you benefit from their labor. The food you eat was prepared by thralls. The clothing you wear was made by thralls. The buildings you inhabit were maintained by thralls. You've watched them being beaten and done nothing. You've seen them sexually exploited and remained silent. You've witnessed the sale of children and didn't intervene. In your defense, what could you do? You're one person in a society where slavery is foundational. To speak out against it would mark you as crazy, dangerous, potentially worthy of outlawry. But that rationalization doesn't make you feel better. One night, unable to sleep, you find yourself talking quietly with Cormac, the Irish thrall who tends the livestock. He's working late, as always, and you're on watch duty, so you have a rare moment of relative privacy. Why don't you run? You ask him. You know the landscape now. You're strong. You could try. He looks at you like you're an idiot. Run where? Back to Ireland. That's hundreds of miles across the sea. Even if I could steal a boat and somehow navigate, what would I find? My village was burned. My family is dead or enslaved elsewhere. There's nothing to run back to. What about forward then? Inland, to another country. And what? Hope to find some society that doesn't have slavery. They all do. The Franks have slaves. The Christians have slaves. The Muslims have slaves. Everyone has slaves. I'd just be traded from one master to another. Except here at least I know what to expect. His fatalism is total, and you realize he's probably right. This isn't just a Viking problem. Slavery is endemic across the medieval world. The Vikings are perhaps more brutal and systematic about it, but the basic institution exists everywhere. So you've just given up, you ask. Cormac is silent for a long moment. I survive, he finally says. That's all I can do. Survive each day and hope that maybe someday something will change. Maybe I'll be freed. Maybe my owner will die and his heir will be kinder. Maybe the Christians will invade and their laws will be different. He laughs bitterly at that last one. Though from what I've heard, the Christian kings use slaves just as readily as the pagans do. They just call it something else and pretend their God approves. He's not wrong. The medieval Christian world is full of serfs, indentured servants and outright slaves, often justified through theological arguments about the natural order and God's will. The conversation leaves you deeply depressed. There's no escape from this system. It's too entrenched, too profitable, too accepted by everyone in power. As the winter wears on, you watch the thralls deteriorate. The combination of inadequate food, constant labor, exposure to cold, and lack of medical care takes its toll. 2 thralls die from illness. One develops pneumonia from working outside in freezing temperatures while wet. The other simply wastes away, her body giving up after years of abuse. Their bodies are buried with minimal ceremony. Their names are forgotten almost immediately. They were thralls. Their lives didn't matter. More thralls will be acquired in the spring raids to replace them. The system continues. This is the engine that drives Viking society. Not just the raids and the warriors, but this, the brutal exploitation of enslaved people whose labor makes everything else possible. The longships that carry raiders, built by thralls or with materials harvested by thralls. The food that feeds the warriors, grown, harvested, and prepared by thralls. The weapons and armor, forged by thralls or paid for with wealth extracted through thrall labor. The entire glorious Viking age, with its exploration and art and culture, sits atop a foundation of human misery, and that's the truth that the sagas don't sing about, that the romanticized versions of Viking history leave out. Behind every heroic warrior, there are dozens of enslaved people whose suffering made that warrior's lifestyle possible. As spring approaches and the ice begins to break up, preparations begin for another raiding season. More ships will sail, more villages will be attacked, more people will be captured and enslaved. The cycle continues, year after year, generation after generation, and you're part of it now, complicit whether you want to be or not. This is the Viking Age, and slavery is its darkest secret.